Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Eakin. I'm a white woman with blonde hair. I'm wearing a navy shirt with an orange and yellow neckline, and I'm sitting in front of a blue and white wall. I am a writer-director, and I will be moderating this panel today with other fellow disabled writers. So thank you for taking the time to join us on this panel discussion. If you would like to view the ASL interpreter in a larger screen, we invite you to pin the video, which will spotlight their video throughout the entire panel. In addition, we have live captioning done by a real life person that is available in the Zoom app by clicking on the CC button, as well as via your web browser. We have posted that link in the chat box. This panel is live. It is also being recorded and will be available on Respectability's Facebook page and website after the event concludes. A higher resolution recording with captions, with open captions, and our ASL interpreters will be posted and sent to everyone who registered next week. If you want to stay connected with Respectability, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter on disability inclusion and equity in the entertainment industry. Check out the link in the chat box to do so as well. We are here today to celebrate the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act by spotlighting a great group of disabled writers from the current cohort of Respectability Summer Lab for entertainment professionals with disabilities. So let's get started today by having everyone come on camera, which I think everyone is here, and introduce themselves. So I will call on people by alphabetical order. So let's start with Amanda.
All right. Hi, my name is Amanda Aguero. I'm a mixed ethnicity woman with brown skin and dark brown hair. I'm sitting in front of my small library with a variety of classic movie posters behind me. I primarily work in a variety of roles during physical production, including script supervising, assisting the director, boom operating, etc. But most recently, I've completed my second feature screenplay, and I'm just loving getting into my journey in the screenwriting process.
Great. So next, let's talk to Leo.
Hi, my name is Leo Alanak. My pronouns are he, him. I am white. I have short brown hair and black rimmed glasses. I am wearing a dark blue button-up shirt with pink flamingos on it, and I'm sitting in front of a yellowish, just plain wall. I grew up in rural Oregon as a trans, queer, and disabled person. I'm a recent graduate of USC School of Cinematic Arts, a writer, producer, and social justice organizer with the long-term goal of becoming a showrunner for sci-fi television that elevates marginalized voices and pushes for revolutionary changes in our world.
Awesome, thanks so much. How about Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki Bailey. I am African-American and I have braids with little pink streaks through them. I am wearing a button-down striped floral print shirt, and I'm sitting in front of a white window and some signage over to the side. Let's see, I'm a writer. I am a performer. I'm an Emmy-nominated producer, and I've most recently completed a pilot, and I am currently working on a screenplay for a film that's going to be coming out hopefully in the next year or so.
Awesome, great, thank you. Let's have Colin go next.
Hi, my name's Colin Buckingham. My pronouns are he, him. I have light brown curly hair, wearing black headphones and a reddish purplish shirt. And I'm sitting on a white couch with an off-white wall in the background. I'm a writer, actor, producer, and choreographer. I most recently completed production on my first short film that I wrote, produced, and choreographed, and have a number of scripts that are in development. And I recently established my production company called Chromatic Lens, whose goal is to provide a platform and to provide stories that historically denied and marginalized people can have a voice and feel represented.
Great, thank you. Let's go with Tamika.
Hello everyone, my name is Tamika Citrus-Spruce. My pronouns is she and her. I am an African-American woman. I'm brown skin with straight black hair. I wear white hoop earrings and a red shirt, and I have in the background a green plant, and it's looking out into a window that has a city landscape behind it. And so I am a disability justice activist, also any filmmaker, specifically producing and screenwriting. I started a production company, Influential Films, that tells the stories of underrepresented communities. And I produced two projects, a short film, Just for a Homicide, which won awards and screened at multiple film festivals, and also a documentary, My Girl Story, which has also screened at film festivals.
Awesome, great. Let's go with Bella.
Hello there, I am Bella Cosper. I'm on Tongva land. I am white with Cherokee undertones, or what I like to think is I have a good tan. I've got dark brown hair and a ponytail, straight as a poker, as my grandmother would say. I'm a TV comedy writer, a UCLA alum, and you might hear my Southern twang, but I've been in LA for almost 2 decades trying to cover this up. I write a lot of characters. I've played a lot of characters in the past, and I've done comedy in the past at UCB, the PAC, and a bunch of other stages here. And TV comedy is my specialty. I like old school, new school, 3 beats, make everybody happy and get out of there. And I live in Hollywood. I have a Metro Pass and a white cane that can get me to any writer's room in town. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoy the panel.
Great, thank you. So let's go with Ty.
Oh, hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here. My name is Ty Friedman. I am a white male with kind of longish hair now. It's like COVID cut haircut. And I've got a striped shirt, and I've got this cool bottle cap pin and some paper clips around my neck. And my pronouns are he and him, and I am a children's media writer. I'm also a educator, and I teach different preschool classes and activities all over the place. And yeah, preschool activities, and yeah, and I used to be a former circus clown, so I've kind of lived a life of trying to make kids laugh, and that's kind of my special superpower. And I am working on trying to be able to make kids laugh to the largest degree, which would be getting into their television sets or their film sets. So I've been working on that. I'm the creator, writer, and star of Ty the Pie Guy, which is a kids cooking show that's available on Amazon and YouTube. And I'm looking forward to doing this panel today. Very excited. Thank you for having me, everyone.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go with Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Granger. I'm a white woman with long auburn hair wearing a turquoise top, and I have a bookcase backdrop. I studied playwriting and screenwriting along with computer science at the University of Michigan, and then I worked in tech and digital media, where I wrote for publications like LA Weekly, Huffington Post, and the San Francisco Chronicle. I came back to screenwriting a few years ago, and I currently write dramatic features and series, including sci-fi and supernatural. Had a couple of small projects produced, and my scripts have been finalists in several competitions. My feature, The Pain-Free Day, was on the 2020 disability list, curated by the Blacklist and the WGA Writers with Disabilities Committee. And I'm really looking forward to today's panel.
Great, thanks so much. Let's go with Juliet.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. My name is Juliet Romeo. I am a Caribbean brown-skinned woman. I'm wearing a pink dress with some embroidery, really pretty embroidery. My hair is in braids. Some of them are red, some of them are brown with a lot of gold tinsel and design braided into it. I am in front of a white wall with a really cool vision board that I made a long time ago. And I am a writer and an award-winning documentarian. My latest documentary just screened on PBS, and it is now eligible for a regional Emmy. I'm really excited about that. I write romantic dramedies and sometimes thrillers that are women-centric. My story style is, it brings awareness and amplifies diverse and disabled voices. And I'm also the founder of Unstoppable Films for disability inclusion in film festivals and beyond, because we are have a lot of new things in store. And we debuted at Slam Dance this year, and we are coming back this year. And we are also pulling together a bunch of other festivals that are also interested. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome, great. So last but not least, Hillary.
Hi, I'm Hillary Van Hoos, she, her. I'm a fair-skinned woman with dark hair, wearing headphones and sitting in front of an image of Sherlock Holmes's study from the Sherlock Holmes Museum in London, England. I'm a 2021 Respectability Lab Fellow and recent grad from USC's Film Production MFA program. And for the last couple of years, I've been putting every bit of free time and resources I have into building a career as a screenwriter. I most enjoy writing character-oriented genre adventures and light dramedies about fish out of water or outsider protagonists who make a difference in people's lives. So a little like Early Edition, Lucifer, or Mandalorian, but probably with a female lead. I'm so pleased to be here because, like the old adage says, it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness, which is to say that it's often preferable to encourage a better way of doing things rather than to only point out what's wrong. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So glad to have everyone here. If you want to go ahead and turn off your camera, except for Juliet, we're going to talk to you first. So Juliet, I would love to chat a little bit about breaking into the industry and kind of expectations. And if we have enough time, I'd love to know a little bit more about you putting together Unstoppable and that festival.
Sure. Well, as far as breaking into the industry as a writer, I feel like there's so much that is said about how we can do it. And I think that people with disabilities are left out of those suggestions. You know, just take a chance and drop everything and move to LA or move to New York. And we, you know, people with disabilities, we have a lot to consider. Like, we have a lot of baggage we have to think about: doctors, specialists, accessibility, our support system when we do things like that. So it took me a long time to kind of just really figure out how I was going to do that. And I think that that's why respectability and programs like this are so like essential to our growth as filmmakers and creatives, because I don't really feel like we would have been able to get there without really huge adversities. And that's actually how Unstoppable came about. There was a lot of adversity, personal adversity for myself, to be able to travel and participate and partake in a lot of the festivals that I wanted to be a part of, to learn from these workshops and network with other filmmakers. My first trip to fly to New York to go to a film festival, I ended up in the hospital, missed my flight back home. It was awful. You know, the ambulance is wheeling me out of Hilton Hotel. It was a whole fiasco. And it's like, yes, that didn't deter me. I was in the hospital like, I can't wait till next year. But I knew that this was going to happen again and again. And it just made me think, I have an invisible disability. What about someone in a wheelchair? What about someone that's blind? Like, going to Sundance is a challenge just for, you know, an able-bodied person. Like, this is really tough. So that's how that came about, to really encourage people and to really change the narrative of what disability is, who we are, and the stories that are told around us. That was really important to me. And Slamdance definitely stepped up and was really interested in my proposal. And we just hit the ground running. I do believe 2020. And a lot of time of our hands had a lot to do with it as well. But it was for the good. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, that's amazing. It was an amazing program where tons of disabled filmmakers could connect, and sometimes you don't get that opportunity. So it's a really cool program.
Yeah. And a way to really encourage and educate people about authentic storytelling, and not this idea that we can have a story about someone with a disability, but an able-bodied person playing that. Like, we really are trying to make these changes. And it starts with us, because we have to educate. Sometimes I know it can be exhausting, but it has to start somewhere so that now they can pass it along. And I saw that immediately, that I had created this blueprint that other festivals were like, hey, there's some great stories out there that we didn't think about. And now they want to also follow what we've done. So I'm really excited about it. I'm happy.
Amazing. Trailblazing. Awesome. So we're next going to talk to Bella and Leo. Thanks so much, Juliet.
Thank you.
They want to come on here. So I'd love to discuss this idea right now that's happening, where disability is like a trendy thing in the diversity conversation. And, you know, how have you reminded executives that this isn't a trend? We're actual human beings, we're here to stay. And what is kind of your interaction with that experience, and what are your thoughts on it? We'll start with, we want to start with Bella.
Okay. A trend to me is like this shag haircut I decided to get when it became all trendy, and I'm trying to let that stuff grow out now. I was told by somebody higher up in the ranks a few years back that disability, diversity with different ethnicities and stuff was just all a trend, and it's all going to go back to normal. Which I thank that person, because I created Egg Roll Media, my company, that is going to be sure that we carry on. Disability isn't something we just choose, like a haircut that's in. It's something we live with. There have been disabled people since the beginning of man and women, and there will be forever. It's nothing that's just going to go away.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any thoughts on this, Leo?
Yeah, I think we also have to look at how the current structure of, of capitalism, for example, like really purposefully has made people with disabilities invisible and pushed them off to the side, right? As well as also being aware, we're having more conversations about accessibility because of COVID, but we're also going to have and currently have a larger pool of people with disabilities who had COVID long haulers, as they're currently being called. So like conversations about disability are coming to the forefront because of the current times in which we live, as more and more people become disabled and, struggle with really finding accommodations and accessibility. And so it's been really helpful in terms of just us becoming more patient and more generous with each other, and just figuring out how we can help each other out. Because the biggest thing to take away is that we all benefit from accessibility, right? Even if you you don't identify as having a disability, we all benefit from doing something like a Zoom call, when everybody can. You don't have to be in a physical location to join, so everybody benefits.
Right, that's great. Anything else you want to add, Bella?
Just that we're here to stay. Just because we're different. I mean, authenticity and real life is what people like to see on TV and in film and all sorts of media. So, people, you might have a disability. I didn't know I was vision impaired as a kid. I didn't find out until later. And so this can be you with any sort of disability. It can be your child, your grandparent, whoever, but your work is more authentic if you have really people telling real stories and real characters that you see in everyday life instead of just putting on the, you know, pretty, normal, shiny picture.
Absolutely. Thank you. And talking about, you know, complex characters and creating authentic disabled characters, I would love to transition to chatting with Hillary and Sarah. Why is it important to create these well-rounded, authentic characters? And how have you dealt with this in your writing and trying to disrupt the narrative of what we usually see when it comes to disability? We can start with, let's start with Sarah and then Hillary.
So I grew up with a disabled dad. He was paralyzed by polio, and seeing how he navigated various obstacles every day definitely shaped my perspective. So even before I was injured and came to identify myself as a person with a disability, I was already deeply interested in telling these stories. So when I started screenwriting seriously, I realized that every one of my scripts had at least one character with some sort of disability. It wasn't something that I set out to do consciously. It just happened because that was part of my lived experience. And now I put a lot of thought into planning and creating complex characters with disabilities in all of my writing so that there's a wide spectrum represented, and disability is just one facet that we show as, you know, nuanced and layered characters. And, you know, I find that we're still seeing a lot of these flat characters with disabilities shown on screen. And the thing that needs to get across to industry is that there's so much more we can do here. And we're starting to see some changes though. Like, I'm very excited about Coda, comes out in a couple weeks on Apple TV. So I think that some of the trend is, you know, obviously good, and we just need to keep building on that momentum and get these stories out there.
Agreed. How about Hillary?
Yeah, I definitely agree too. A whole lot of what you'll see as inauthentic representation of disabilities on TV and movies will be obvious stuff like someone on the autism spectrum being antisocial instead of having difficulty socializing, or portraying their feeling of overstimulation as being identical to a panic attack, or say someone with diabetes not checking their blood sugar or measuring their dose of insulin before giving an injection. But, you know, just doing a little research can avoid examples that in your face. But writing complex, authentic characters goes beyond just doing research on the internet. Although, again, doing a ton of research that's, you know, in-depth research is necessary too. And by getting the details right, that doesn't mean I can't be creative. As a fiction writer, and especially as someone who writes genre fiction like sci-fi or fantasy, there are a lot of ways I can choose to extrapolate from what I know or what I find out from research to create characters and stories. One of my favorite examples, one of my favorite sci-fi examples, especially in a number of ways, is Geordi LaForge from Star Trek: The Next Generation. The fact that this character has a disability and uses an integrated device, you could even define him as a cyborg, while he also fits organically into the story as one of the most effective and multifaceted characters on the show, illustrates how smoothly a character with a disability can fit into just about any type of narrative. It's the easiest to write subjects about which you're already an expert, of course, but one more thing I want to mention is if I'm writing about a specific lived experience that's at all different from my own, I reach out and talk to a number of people or spend time in a given community in order to pick up on the small, subtle things that you just can't know about any other way. It can make a huge difference in the quality and enjoyability to the viewers of what you write. One way to tell if you're on the right track is if you're able to successfully use in-jokes. So for example, the South Park episode Basic Cable had a joke about the diabetic protagonist eating an entire pie and having to give himself a massive amount of insulin to compensate, which might not play to everyone, but it's a great in-joke for the type 1 diabetes community. So yeah, hopefully this is giving the people watching this panel some good ideas about where to start and a few common pitfalls to avoid. Sarah, do you have any other thoughts?
I think you hit a lot of important points. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. The joke thing is something that it is very, it's almost important to have actual disabled writers instead of just consultants sometimes, because those writers will make the jokes and feel they can cross that boundary where sometimes other people won't want to do that. And I think it only makes the content better. So I love you bringing that up. Thanks so much. So let's transition to chatting with Amanda. And, you know, I know, Amanda, you've done some acting, and we'd love to hear about your experience of disabled characters being presented in these auditions, and like, what do you hope you would see more of?
Totally. That is a great question. And it kind of transitions very well from what we were just talking about. To me, it's really an interesting topic, because I feel like screenwriters are so, they have like put a big burden on themselves to write disability into their screenplays, and like, oh, I want this character to be disabled. How do I write that in? Whereas I want people to know how easy, I guess, is what I would say, to include a character with a disability into their movie. For example, when I go into auditions, like if I'm being cast as girl with a bucket of popcorn at a high school football game, I've gone into auditions that are similar to that, and the casting director or the director even will approach me and say like, wow, we're so interested in like your performance of eating this bucket of popcorn, but I'm not sure how we'll explain why you're missing your arm, or how we'll go about explaining that. And it's so interesting to me, because like, you don't need an explanation for someone who's sitting in the stands that has a disability, because in reality, when we walk around to like the grocery store, or we just in our neighborhoods, we're all different. Like, all people are different people, and there are people with disabilities like in our everyday lives. So that is more normal, I think, than people realize. And from an acting perspective, it would be like, I would be thrilled to enter an audition for an extra, even where that isn't, that's not a question being asked, and it's not like a kind of a hindrance to the casting process.
Right. Or they don't have to make up a big backstory to compensate for why you exist the way you do.
Totally. Yes.
I totally agree with that. You know, and as far as writing goes, so when you're writing, do you include specific descriptions about disability, or are you more open, or how do you treat it?
Great question. So if there is going to be a character who at some point has to address a disability, or you really want a certain character to have a disability and they're the main character, I think it's totally valid to do like what Hillary and Sarah were saying about researching it, including it into the story. But also from a writing perspective, it's great to write extras or little bit player parts into your story and have an open mind when going into casting, because those are characters that you might not necessarily know exactly what you're looking for until you go into the casting room, and just have an open mind about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good message for all creatives and all executives in the industry. So thanks so much. We're gonna transition and talk to Nikki Bailey. And this leads us into a place where usually when there is inauthentic writing, we end up with something called inspiration porn. And everyone in the disability community knows what it is, but others may not know what this is. Maybe you can explain it and then talk about how you combat against it in your own writing.
Sure. Inspiration porn is a term that was coined by Australian disability activist Stella Young in a TED Talk in 2014. And it is, the meaning of inspiration porn is portrayals and uses of disability that are overly sentimental or pitiful, that have like an uplifting moral message primarily aimed at non-disabled viewers, and people with disabilities being objectified even when they're being named. So inspiration porn is sort of all of the stuff that it's a lot of what we do see in the media, showing people with disabilities. So one of the ways that we combat that, which we've heard already multiple times, is by writing complex, authentic characters. So characters that are not just there to serve the purpose of being the person with a disability, or characters who are not there just to be the inspiration or the sentimental, hopeful character who makes you feel good about yourself. Like, that's not all that people with disabilities are. That isn't necessarily a full expression of what a complete human being is. That's just using their disability as a way to pull on heartstrings, and that's kind of cheating, if you ask me. You know, people with disabilities are fully well-rounded individuals who have a wide range of interests, a wide range of abilities, and a wide range of things about them that make them interesting. And their disability may or may not even be one of the reasons that they're interesting. And so it would be much more, it would behoove Hollywood, I think, to be much more intentional about making sure that we're telling stories about people with characters who have disabilities in a way that shows them as complete human beings that have a whole bunch of different experiences. Like, one of the characters that I think was really that's been a really fun portrayal of a person with a disability is the character of Steve on Ramy. Steve in the show is just a huge jerk. He's like a huge jerk, and we're not used to seeing a person with a disability being portrayed as a jerk. And it's wonderfully refreshing, but it also shows that you know, people with disabilities have bad days. People with disabilities fight with their friends. People with disabilities have needs that their friends can maybe help them meet, but also that their friends get in the way of meeting. And so that show really showed to me a portrayal of a person with a disability who was not inspiration porn, but was instead just a really well-rounded character. And that's the point, I think, of what we're all trying to say.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any characters that you're creating right now that you're really excited about? Are they sassy? Are they unlikable? Or is there one specific kind of character from any of your work?
You know, I have a character that I'm working on right now who is the personification of someone's bipolar disorder. And so they are a comic book, not a comic book, an animated personification of someone's bipolar disorder. And she's like a total a-hole. She's and it's a lot of fun to write because, number one, I get to have fun with bipolar, which is something that is not necessarily thought of as fun. And it's not fun to experience, generally speaking. But, you know, people who have mental health challenges make jokes about it constantly. And so, like, to the point that Hillary made earlier about in-jokes, this character has got a lot of jokes that people who are dealing with mental health challenges will get. And also will understand that that this is just one facet of this character, but it's not all that that person is not just their bipolar.
Right. That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. Okay, great. So let's transition and talk to Colin and Tamika. Hello. So I would love to chat here about intersectionality and disability on screen and why that is so important, and how do each of you include it in your work? So we can start with Tamika, and then we'll go to Colin.
Oh, yes, I think this is very important to also showcase, this various types of disabilities, but for various races, ethnicities, backgrounds, and such, because disability is not monolithic, it's just not one type. And so it's like some of the experiences that I have, for example, as being an African-American woman with a physical disability might be a little bit different, than a white woman with a physical disability because of race. for example. And so I think that in films, we have to, show those complexities in stories. And so that's why my personal mantras of one film that is recently out, My Girl Story, which tells the story of two African girls from Detroit fighting to be the young women they want to become. And one of the girls featured in the documentary actually has a disability, has spina bifida. But with her spina bifida, you can't really tell just by looking at her. But in the film, she talks about that it's there. And other projects that have in development are, centering on Black women with disabilities. So, that's just, I would like to see more representation of various kinds, such as what I'm doing. So that's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. How about Colin?
So intersectionality for disability is super important because disability by its own nature is intersectional. It's one of the only demographics that you have the potential to enter at any point in your life. And it's something that affects everyone, no matter your race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, that kind of thing. And since it's the 41st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which wouldn't have been possible without intersectionality of the Black Panthers specifically bringing food and supplies to the sit-in that made the act actually get signed. So including multiple voices and collaborating with people to create moments of authenticity for other people, not just, I myself am a white agender person, but those are the only perspectives that I can truly speak to. So if I want to create moments of authenticity in the work that I'm doing and uplift multiple different demographics with the work that I'm doing, then it's important to be able to collaborate with and at the very least get, like Hillary was saying, research from multiple different sources of what I'm writing about. And, the rising tide that lifts all ships kind of thing. So if we can create work that not only uplifts people with disabilities, but also provides other historically denied people the chance to be seen and feel like they belong in media and therefore in life, then that can, I think, be really impactful and necessary.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything you're working on specifically now that is speaking to that? I know you said you started a production company and that was kind of a main focus.
Yeah, so I'm writing a feature dramedy kind of slice of life-ish thing right now that explores has multiple different leads and supportings from different demographics, and I'm collaborating with a couple people to make sure that those stories are told with authenticity and making sure to do the research. But it's definitely a learning process, and I'm currently in the finishing touches of writing this short film that will explore that as well.
Great, cool. Excited for both of your guys' projects. All right, let's go next to, we're gonna bring back Sarah and also talk with Leo. So a study just came out by Nielsen recently about how there's only 16% representation of characters with disabilities in TV. And what is the difference between features and television? And kind of tell us what you've seen in your experience, because we definitely need more in TV. In both, actually, but we can start with, how about we start with Leo?
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of biased because I'm more of a TV person than a film person, but TV has always kind of, because it's faster paced and because there's so much more television produced than there are movies now, it has always been kind of ahead of the game in a lot of ways of diversity and inclusion. But that said, it's frustrating, and I think several other people have already talked about this already, but the few times where there are disabled characters portrayed, they are very rarely portrayed by disabled actors, and it's frustrating to see that continue. A good example is, one of my favorite books was recently adapted to a TV show, Shadow and Bone. And they it was a big deal because they have such a major character with a disability, and it was like this really cool thing. And they did not cast a person with a disability. And so that was really disappointing, because in the few times when, you know, you get a glimpse of it, you know, a glimpse of representation and a glimpse of like really cool, well-developed characters, there's still a lack of connection in either, you know, they don't have a disabled writer or they don't have a disabled actor. And so there still seems to be a disconnect even in television and movies about, you know, kind of syncing up the fact that disabled people need to be involved in all elements of this creation of disabled stories and disabled characters. So yeah, TV is like ahead of the game, but also very much still behind in a lot of ways.
Right. Do you have thoughts about this, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what was the other statistic? It was like 2% of, there was another one, I think that was from the respectability study, that 2% representation across the board of actors with disabilities. And that's just so much lower than even, you know, most of the other demographics that you see, or underrepresented groups. So it's frustrating. It does seem like there is some work being done to get more people with disabilities on and off camera. But, you know, and it also doesn't seem like there's a lot of pushback. It's just that education needs to happen so that the people making the films understand that this is actually very possible and very doable, and just need to talk to people and have conversations about what accommodations they need. And then you can end up with such a richer, more well-rounded product overall, having people both on and off camera. From the writer's perspective, generally speaking, you know, it's been easier to be a feature writer. It's always been more flexible than working on a series. You can do it from anywhere. You can have your own schedule. You know, it lends itself a lot more easily to people with disabilities. That said, it seems like writers' rooms may be changing as a result of the use of Zoom in the pandemic. And I think this is a really exciting time, and we need to capitalize on this opportunity. You know, personally, I started writing features because that's, you know, unlike Leo, I was more comfortable with features. And the more I learned about TV, I thought, oh, the writer's room environment might be just too difficult for me to navigate. But when the pandemic happened, everything went remote, and I decided to write my first pilot, you know, just for the heck of it. And it got me some meetings with producers. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of rooms are planning on continuing to at least have a hybrid setup. So, you know, some writers, if they need to work from home, I think part of this was done for parents, for example, to be able to have more flexibility. Some are going to stay fully remote because they like it. So, you know, time will tell. But I do think it's a time with a lot of possibilities right now. And you know, I was really skeptical, but now I'm feeling a lot more hopeful. I think it's a good time to be a writer.
I agree with that. Okay, great. We're going to transition into chatting, I think last but not least, with Ty Friedman. And, you know, you said you work in kids content. I've written something in kids content. Never thought I wanted to go into the space, but it's so important that kids see at a young age to disabled characters and narratives. So if you want to talk a little bit about how you got into that and what you're working on and how you're putting that forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and it's so important for kids to be, I guess, exposed to people who live different lives. And that goes not just with disabilities, but just with, you know, with gender and you know, people on the different spectrum on the LGBTQ. And it's just, it's very, very important to show that and to normalize it. And I think just as we have more options where they can see maybe themselves or you know, just different people, they'll be able to make a, you know, a more understanding, more kinder, more inclusive generation of of kids who become great adults as well. I think personally that the best way to make change is to go straight to kids. And I think that they're the ones who are going to be, making this world a better place. So, I mean, Gina Davis, she has that Gina Davis Institute for Women. Mm-hmm. So when she first started, the first thing that she did was go directly to the kids media world and try to get gender parity with the main characters. And it makes perfect sense that is the first route to go. And I think that needs to be done absolutely with disabled characters as well. I know, I know Ryerson in Toronto, they have the Children's Media Lab out there, and they had a really great report about the 2019 year of television with kids content. And they, even with 20% of the population of Canada having a disability, only 9% of the characters on TV that year had glasses, when only and only 2% of them had any actual characteristics of disability, and there was actually almost 0% of any neurodiversity within it. And so, I mean, for me personally, I only just found out about being neurodiverse this January. I found out that I got diagnosed with ADHD and ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. And, I think that if maybe I was exposed to characters on television, I might have been able to understand myself a little bit better. But ever since I have been able to, it's only opened things up for me and it's made me feel more able and kinder to myself. And I've been able to be a better writer because of it, because I understand what makes me great and what makes me tick and how to help myself. But yeah, and so, I mean, I think that that's a really important part of the puzzle, is getting kids to see themselves and getting them to expose to different types of people with different disabilities. I think there's some great kid shows out there that are starting to do that now. And it is, again, I think we talked a little bit about how it is starting to get a little trendy, and it seems like there is a lot more. The kids media world is actually really great. It's a bunch of people like me who are former educators who care about kids and they want to see a better world. And so it's a little bit easier for that world to kind of make points. But even so, with all that being done, there still wasn't a whole lot of disability representation. So hopefully that can start to change. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hopeful at some of these respectability events. They told us that they started consulting, I think the first year. These facts might be off, so Lauren, someone can give better statistics, but I think it was 10 projects, and this year now they have 70 that they're consulting on. Yeah. And that's amazing to hear. So I can't wait.
It sounds like it's specifically the kids media, kids television, that really wants to do it the right way and wants to make sure that they're able to expose kids. There were some great ones this year. There was I really loved that show. Let's see, my favorite show this year was City of Ghosts, and there's a couple of characters that I thought kind of were on the neurodiverse spectrum. And then there was the great what's that show, The Healing Powers of Doug, had such fantastic had so many fantastic characters that were disabled. And I think that as we see more of that, and as we see well-written characters, and I think on both of those cases by actual disabled writers as well, within the writer's room, or at least consulted, I find that to be, you start to see more authentic and more interesting characters. And I think kids media deserves just as important and authentic characterizations as anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got the facts from Lauren. It was 12 projects in 2019, 70 in 2020. And then so far in 2021, there is 160 projects. So yeah, that is encouraging that it's shifting. So thanks so much, Ty, for chatting about this. So I'd love to invite everyone actually to come back on screen and to see all your faces. And one thing I want to talk about and kind of open the floor, whoever wants to speak up can talk about this, is why, and we touched on it a little bit, but why are accommodations so important in hiring disabled writers? And you know how this year Zoom has opened the door to so many people. I worked in a Zoom writer's room, worked great. You know, it's possible, and we're seeing that. But I'd love to hear about specific experiences or things you wish that you could be given, because sometimes, you know, executives or people hiring don't want to ask, or they don't know how to, you know, what are the accommodations we need to make? And I love talking about it directly because that makes people go, oh, okay, yeah, we can do that, you know? So
Actually,
anyone can start.
I have some thoughts. This
Sure,
is
go ahead,
Hillary
Hillary.
speaking. Yeah, so I think one of the more interesting things about the accommodations issue is that a lot of the accommodations that are desired or needed for people with disabilities are oftentimes the same as what people should have or would like that don't have disabilities necessarily. Like, you know, we've discussed how a lot of buildings where writers' rooms or pre-production is taking place don't have elevators still 30 years after the ADA was passed. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's something that is necessary for a lot of people with disabilities. But even for people who don't, you know, they're having to carry giant pallets of paper and water and mini fridges up 3 flights of stairs into production offices. And that's, you know, that's not something that should be happening. And same thing with having quiet rooms available for people who need them, for, you know, everything from people on the autism spectrum to nursing mothers to just people who need to, you know, get away from the noise and the craziness for a little bit. That's something that should be available for everyone, especially for people with disabilities, but should also be available for everyone. And then same thing with healthier working hours and healthier food availability. You know, these are all things that, yes, they're absolute necessities for people with disabilities. Oftentimes people will literally die without some of these accommodations, but you know, it's very, very detrimental to the health of people that start out without any sort of, you know, need for them, and they end up needing them later because they weren't given them beforehand. So I think that's just something that is very good to point out and to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. Does anyone else have anything specific?
Hey, this is Bella speaking. This is Bella speaking. I'll speak from the blind and vision impaired perspective. We really don't need much of an accommodation other than, I would just say, like in the writer's room, if there's going to be a certain note taped onto something, we might not see that. If you're going to give me a high five, you better call it out. But otherwise, I have my own laptop. I can read. We have all the tools we need. Well, I'm speaking for my disability. I don't know about others, but with the vision problems with people, we can adjust everything on our screens that we need to. And I prefer to be in the writer's room because I like catered lunches and craft services. But yeah, we just need the opportunity. And you know, we know our way to the bathroom. I've been on sets before where people are like, do you need me to wait outside the door? And we can take care of ourselves. If you've never been exposed and you're worried about those types of things, we're big kids. We can do it on our own. So don't be afraid of us, and don't be afraid to ask. You know, it's not awkward. It's better to ask us questions instead of, you know, being like, well, I wondered, but I didn't want to say anything. So we're open to it.
I think that's great.
Yeah, Bella, I definitely want to piggyback on what you're saying. Speaking from someone that has a non-visible disability, try not to make assumptions. I get a lot of, you don't look sick, you don't look like there's anything wrong. And so then when I do ask for something, I kind of get this judgment or vibe of, well, why you, everyone else is walking, why can't you walk? You know, there were so many times that I would have loved to just like, I love to be on set. just to be on set and be a PA or whatever, I feel so uncomfortable doing it, even though I want to do it so badly, because I know I'm going to be judged or just seem like I'm being lazy. But the more I'm running up and down, the more my oxygen is getting depleted. And I think to myself, if I just had a scooter, I could literally carry even more things than what one person can carry, you know, and get the job done probably, you know, better than if I was just one person walking. But that's not even something that they're thinking. They're automatically thinking that, you know, I'm lazy and I don't really want to do it or whatever. And I feel like if you know this person has a disability, you know what the situation is like, you don't know what the limitations may be. And so don't have any assumptions. Like ask, like Bella said, you can ask. It's not gonna come off like, we're not gonna be upset that you asked a question respectfully.
Right. I agree with that. I've been on a couple of sets and things where people assumed something and almost didn't cast someone because they assumed the person couldn't do it. And I said, let me ask, like, I walk differently. Let me ask this person if it's going to be an issue. And I think that's what we need people to do for us, is not assume or not think it's going to be awkward, and ask, and then be willing to accommodate. Because usually, as you're saying, it does benefit everyone. So anyone else?
Something that would be nice is if, you know, if people could just ask like what you need and not have that be lip service. Like if that could be like a genuine thing of like, what do you need, and not viewed as an imposition when you honestly and truthfully answer. And I mean, to change someone's preconceived notions of like what is an imposition on them, what's difficult and inconvenient, which I'm sure all people with disabilities have heard one of those words used to describe them at one point, or their requests at one point or another. And like, I think we talked about it in one of the sessions, how there's, you know, depending on the person's, you know, income guarantee based on their level of fame or that kind of thing, they get all these insane or like absurd accommodations of, you know, only red M&Ms and like that kind of thing. And so it would be nice if that could be extended for people who say that like we're casting and we're including people on this set that are, regardless of their abilities or non-disabled versus disabled and that kind of thing, for that to actually ring true would mean to earnestly ask what people need and not view that as a hindrance or a burden on them.
Great. I have we have 2 minutes left, and we have one question from the audience if someone wants to answer this. It says, how do you collect your creativity against prejudices?
I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. Collect your creativity.
I'm wondering if it's kind of pushing again, like still being creative and pushing against when people are potentially judging you or judging your story. How do you kind of push forward through that?
I actually have a really great experience that just recently happened. It didn't happen to me, but because I heard it, it made me want to reconsider. So someone else had went to, had a general meeting, and the person just literally was like, yeah, no one wants to see this type of disability on screen. And it made me feel like, wow, so then they don't want to see any of my work, right? And the person actually said, well, you know, I really feel bad because I am working with them and I just had to like, you know, do something else and take out all of the creativity and the work that I was passionate about putting into the story. I just took it out, you know, it's a job, right? And so at first I was excited to do it as well. And I was like, I don't know if I want to continue to, you know, have this meeting or go forth with this project or this opportunity actually. So, but I really thought about it and I said, you know what? Every time someone says no, I mean, we wouldn't be here. If we can, you know, as a Black woman, if if we heard no, I would not be here. Things would still be the same. You know what I mean? I'd be on a field somewhere. So we have to push back. We have to push back. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to give my log lines, and they're gonna love it. And then I'm just gonna keep sprinkling in some disability here and there. Eventually, you know, I feel like sometimes they're like babies. It's like they automatically hear vegetable and they're like, no. And so then you have to, like, you know, my sister buries, you know, vegetables in things for my niece. And then she's like, I love it. I didn't even know. So I feel like that's what we have to do to these people that have so much resistance, because they're just so used to what they think it is, and their understanding, that we have to kind of, you know, passionately and yet empathetically crack the wall. You know, some people you do have to go hard, and you have to be like, listen, this is not what's up. But those people that, you know, they don't really mean it. They just don't understand it. They're not being villainous. They're not being vile. Eventually they're going to see. And again, you have to understand too, it comes down to the bottom line. So they could think what they want to. I mean, people thought Black Panther would be ridiculous. They proved that. People didn't think for a Black woman as a main character would be anything. Then we have Girls Trip, and now everyone wants a Girls Trip. So we have to just do it until they realize, oh, whoa, this makes us money. You know, whatever it is for them, we know what it means for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up because we're just over time. But anyone can reach out to any of these people and connect. This video is going to be up in a week. And I know the people from Respectability, they're around, all their bios are there, find them, and we can chat more about this, because this conversation is very big and we could talk for hours about it. But I think it's a good place to leave that there are people who will say yes, and keep pushing past that with your project. So thank you everyone so much for joining this. And it was a great conversation.